Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody, and welcome to the live stream for the 27th of November. Hope you guys are well. How's it going, guys? We've got Kizza here, we've got Samuel here. A few guys of you are early, I think. We got Eric. Let's give it a second or two here. Hey, Zuba, how's it going? Bottle of water. You can ask the questions in here. Hey, Addy, how's it going, man? Addo. Should I do DM outreach with videos instead of text? Yeah, I would do that. Or at least voice notes. Kind of encourages people to actually open the message. Hey, Alfie, how's it going, man? It does say the December the 23rd, doesn't it? I don't know why that is. Do we have the right link here? Let's have a look. Do you recommend doing voice notes as the first outreach message? Yeah, I would say so. It's usually quite a good idea. There's no school questions today, guys. We're going to keep it specifically just the YouTube chat, just as a sort of experiment, see how that goes, see what the retention's like, and see what kind of questions we get. Cool. We're just waiting for a few more people to load in here. Whilst we do that, I'm going to go and grab some water, and then we'll get into some questions. So think about what you want to ask. I'll be back, and then we'll get into it. All right, guys. Well, let's get into some questions, shall we? We'll learn Facebook marketing. Where do I start? I don't think there's any courses that you necessarily need to do. I would just watch every YouTube video there is on Facebook ads. That's probably going to be your best place to start, man. Do you have a girlfriend? Yes, I do. She's pretty great. Why don't you accept crypto payments for EasyGrow 2.0? Because of the fees associated, and we'd only be able to take crypto payments as a company. Like, I can't take it in my personal name for tax reasons and fraud reasons and stuff. And basically, we'd need to get a crypto license with the company, but getting one of those is like really fucking difficult. So we've just never bothered. And not many people want to pay in crypto. Like, if you want to pay, just liquidate your crypto and then pay in US dollars or whatever. Simon says, how do you scale a one-on-one based consulting offer without destroying quality or burning out? What's the correct sequence of delegation? Well, it's simple, man. You don't try and scale a one-on-one system-based consulting offer because you can't scale one-to-one unless you want to hire a shit ton of coaches to do what you do as good as you. Instead of doing it, you just transition to info. You're way better off trying to scale that than one-on-one. So just transition to info, man. Just watch Consulting Nirvana and Acquisition Genesis, and that will pretty much set you straight. I wouldn't bother trying to scale one-to-one, man. You can get to like 6 figures with that, maybe multi-six at an absolute push, but anything beyond that, man, it's not a possibility, sadly. A trial by 5 vid is the most useful on YouTube. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Do you interview people that currently have the problem, or people who used to have the problem? Yeah, I mean, you should interview everyone in your niche, man. Everyone relevant to the problem should be interviewed, especially those who have already solved it. If they don't have the problem anymore, it means that they found a solution, or the problem was so difficult that they gave up. And so it's definitely worth talking to those people either way, man. 100%. 100%. Hey Charlie, I'm in your program. I'm a copywriter trying to help spiritual mindset coaches trying to earn 10K a month. Could your program help me do this? Or is my niche too broad or not good? I mean, it's a good niche if you can figure out how to make those things tangible, because the big problem and the big issue with holistic mindset coaching and stuff is basically the fact that making it tangible or putting an actual tangible outcome or offer or time frame on those services is next to impossible. If you can figure out how to do that, then it works, but most of the time it doesn't. Guys, I'm just going to go and tell my cleaner to stop hoovering a second, because she's hoovering around upstairs, and I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's very distracting. So I'll be right back. Hang on. Someone's fired. No, my cleaner, bless her, she hoovers twice a week. But obviously it's not very good for video recording or live streams. So if you're building a coaching business with no audience or strong systems, how would you structure your content to attract only buyers? I'd only make content that would appeal to buyers. And that's pretty much that simple, man. Like, figure out who's going to buy your thing and what problems do they face and what problems are they actually trying to solve, and then make videos about solving those problems. And by virtue, you should find that you'll get those people in. So yeah, it should be, it's pretty straightforward, man. You think about it. After I watch your videos, I forget all the gurus. Dude, a lot of the gurus still have like stuff that's pretty useful. You know, a lot of them still have helpful things, but it's pretty beneficial to pay attention to one person. And then once you sort of exhaust their knowledge, then you can expand your mentoring network, so to speak. So Charlie, you helped me with my Facebook ad copy for free on Messenger like 4 years ago. You're a huge help when I first started my agency. I hit my first 10K last month. That's huge, man. Congratulations. I'm really happy for you there, man. That's really good. I must admit, I don't recall helping you there, but if I did, then I'm glad I did, man. Now it's time for you to buy Easy Grow. I'm just fucking around. How long does it take to learn Facebook ads from knowing nothing? Like a month, probably. To like learn the theory of how to do it, probably like a couple of weeks. What's your body fat percentage? It's quite low. I have visible abs, if that's what you're asking. But I've never had my body fat properly measured before. So How would you scale an online consulting business from 10K a month to 30K plus? Probably by transitioning to info, selling a high ticket course, and literally just tripling the amount of volume you do. So if you're making 10K a month, then all you're going to have to do is just triple what you do to make 30. It's pretty straightforward, man. The main thing with a lot of coaching consulting businesses is they get all tied up in the service delivery, and that becomes the bottleneck, because it doesn't matter how many clients you sign. Like if you can't deliver on them, then you cannot scale. So it doesn't matter how good you get at delivery and stuff. Do you do one-on-ones? Yeah, I do one-on-ones exclusively for people in high ticket heaven in our mastermind. So everyone who joins high ticket heaven, we do like a one-on-one kickoff call with our clients, and then they can schedule one-on-ones with me like pretty much once a quarter or throughout the year. And that's the only instance that I offer one-on-ones is with that in mind. I don't sell like 1 hour time slots or anything, although maybe I would if someone offered enough money for it, but it would make more sense than just buy the mastermind, to be honest. So definitely sub 8%. I don't know what my body fat is, man, but it's I used to be like really skinny. Like it always used to be quite an advantage of mine growing up. Is like I was a really skinny guy as a kid. And so what that means is like I've got this ridiculously fast metabolism. So I'm kind of ectomorphic, right? But what that means is when I gain muscle or when I train, I gain like weight really slowly. But the only weight that I ever gain is lean mass. Like I never gain fat. So yeah, you're 10% body fat. I don't know, man. I don't know. What's that weird noise you keep making with your noise or mouth? Yeah, sorry about that. Whenever I get like congested, I get this like, the problem is it's only when I talk. So like when you're recording for long periods of time, like if you think about it, it's not actually normal to talk for like 10 minutes, 12 minutes, like an hour, 3 hours. And so when I do that, I get this, if I've got any level of congestion from like my diet or from like just an immune response, it kind of builds up and you have to sort of like keep clearing it. And it's horrible, but it's a bad habit of mine and I'm trying to stop it. So Samuel says, what's the most important habit that you built between the ages of 18 to 21 that gave you a lifelong advantage? Well, it's different. It's impossible for me to measure any lifelong advantages because I'm only 27. Probably the only habit is just working 12 hours a day, really. I could sit and say meditation or cold showers or reading or the mindset stuff. That was all helpful, but really like the only thing that mattered was just doing the work and working, 11, 12 hours a day nonstop, and building that sort of work ethic habit. So probably that, man. I don't think it goes much deeper than that. Like every other habit you do should be to facilitate the habit of work. So like in my instance, I was like, I need to work 12 hours a day to get this done. So if I took cold showers, it was so that I could like, shower less so I could work more. If I read, it was so that I could be better at work. If I meditated, it was so I could be more focused. If I did the mindset stuff, it was so I could be encouraged to work. So yeah. What's this question? This is from Marlon. Hey man. If your B2C niche targets young men with limited budgets and you can't easily target older, wealthier people because you're 19, what would you do? Well, I'd question that statement as to why you can't target older, wealthier people because of your age. I signed my first client at like 19 and, he was like a 50-year-old dude. So I wouldn't concern yourself too much with that, man. If you can get someone a result, they won't really care how old you are. And you don't have to tell them you're 19. You can just tell them you're like 23 or something. They're not going to know the difference, man. Do you think people in the UK are harder to sell compared to the US? Definitely. For sure. I think British people tend to be a lot more. Well, first of all, we have a reduced line of credit compared to America. So America has more access to debt, more access to credit cards. And and therefore, you're going to find that they have more buying power because they have more access to debt. But second of all, they do tend to be a lot less resistant towards purchasing and taking risks because America's entire economy and culture is built predominantly on risks. So yeah. Olivia says, how do you stay focused for so many hours? Do you take any supplements? Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the opposite of supplements. So I don't have any caffeine or nicotine in my life. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do the snooze thing, the thing you put in your lips. I don't supplement. The only things that I supplement every day are creatine, magnesium citrate, and vitamin D. And those are the only 3 things that I supplement. And then maybe some electrolytes if I'm like feeling a bit dehydrated. But they're unflavored and that's nothing. But yeah, no supplements for focus. But the way that you stay focused for so many hours is just by practicing being focused for that many hours. And, you want to learn to install focus and that sort of art of doing one thing at a time everywhere. And then it will just become your natural mode of behavior. So like right now, for example, I'm on this live stream. If I was to share my screen with you guys, the only thing I have open here, literally, I'm just checking, is the stream and nothing else. And there's no distractions, there's no notifications. Everything I do, whether it's a meeting, a live stream, a piece of content, an ad, anything, is all just done without any distractions. If I'm at dinner with my parents, it's just a dinner. And when you learn to just do one thing at a time everywhere else, personally, when you sit down to work, it's significantly easier. So this is a good question. Not that one. I don't understand that question. Some people say making money is easy, and others say it's hard. Who's right? Well, they're both kind of right. He who thinks it's easy will probably find it easier, and he who thinks it's hard will probably find it harder. Making money it's not like a universal. It's subjective to the person observing the thing. So you have money, and then you have the human, and then you have the human's observation of money. And the way that they perceive it and the way that they observe it will drastically influence the ease at which they can earn it. And so if you think that making money is like really hard and really difficult, then you're just going to make it really hard and really difficult. So I don't think that there's a binary answer. Like, to me, making money is easy. But a lot of people don't share that opinion. So it can be both, depending on the perceiver. What's the average ceiling for a one person done for you service? That's a good question. I would say like the average ceiling before having to hire your first person, like besides a virtual assistant, is probably going to be like 10 to 15K a month. Like, look, it depends entirely on how much you're charging. If you're charging like, 4 or 5K a month, then you can get to like probably, I don't know, like 40K a month before you burn out. If you're charging like 1 to 2K a month, you can probably get to like 8 to 15K a month. Generally speaking, like with my experience, once you go beyond having, like with marketing, once you go beyond like having like 8 to 10 clients yourself and then having to do sales and then having to do outreach as well, and then all the operations, that's when it starts to get tricky, so to speak. So probably around that 15K mark. Charlie, please do the day in the life time lapse again. I love that video. Yeah, I probably won't make another day in the life video anytime soon. It's not really. I only made that video as sort of a joke or a stab at the industry because everyone was making all these like these fucking yacht party day in the life videos, and I was like, this is not how it is. I don't think making another one would add that much value. So I have Easy Grow and Imperium Academy. Which one should I start with? Well, you should just ask the sales rep that onboarded you into Easy Grow. So they'll tell you. Okay, just a second here, guys. How would you adapt if you suddenly developed a sleeping disorder and needed to sleep for 12 hours a day? Well, I'd probably just ratio it out. So, like, for example, I'd probably just, instead of working 12 hours a day, I'd probably just work 9 hours a day. But that seems like a very far-fetched question, man. So, yeah, I think we'll move on. Julius, this is a good question from Julius here. Is it important to fully eliminate all possibilities, to go after urges, or focus more on pure discipline? Well, I can tell you, man, that it is so much easier. Look, discipline manifests itself in two forms. The first form is resisting impulse, and the second form is doing something difficult. So when you think about it, like, it takes discipline to get up and go to the gym, or it takes discipline to meditate, or it takes discipline to go for a run. That's the hard part, discipline. But the other discipline is not eating the cake in the kitchen, or, you know, not going on some video game that you've got. So it's kind of like you need to attack it from both angles. And my favorite method for building discipline to begin with is, because you only have such a finite amount of discipline. And so when you remove all the environmental triggers that give the impulse possibility to manifest, like if you've got a packet of cigarettes in your flat, you're going to want to smoke them. You know, if you've got like an Xbox in your bedroom, you're going to want to play on it. And so when you have those things in your environment, you know, you're constantly straining yourself to not do them, so that when it comes to doing the hard things, you've kind of depleted and you've sort of depleted your disciplinary reserves, and then getting to the gym or working hard becomes more difficult, because the 80% of your disciplinary energy is being spent on impulse control, as opposed to, you know, building something that's hard. And so, like, I always think the first place to focus is definitely on your environment and eliminating any possibilities that your discipline can sort of be tested in your environment. Yeah, for sure. Nikos says, what's your opinion on manifesting? That's a good one. I think that the law of attraction doesn't exist, but I think the law of action does. And I think that if you, like, the only purpose for me of believing in the law of attraction or believing in manifestation is recognizing that a better future, or that a potential outcome in your life is possible, and recognizing that possibility, and then harnessing energy from that possibility. So at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to help you get what you want is if you work hard and put cause to effect. Because your goal, your outcome it's a screenshot of the future. It's a state that exists that can be brought into existence if certain things happen and you make them happen. And so, you know, a lot of people, they just, like, specifically women, will just talk about manifesting. But really, like, the only purpose it serves is getting a clear idea of what you want. And then pretty much the only thing you have to do after that is the work. And if you do the work, you'll get what you want. So that's kind of I think it serves a good purpose of figuring out what you want, but you can't just, it's very simple, man. Like, think about it like this. If someone wants, let's say someone wants to manifest being a millionaire, and what they do is they spend their entire life in their bedroom, sitting on their bed, thinking about how they're going to become a millionaire. And they do that for 10 years. They don't go out the house. They don't talk to anyone. They don't try and start a business. They don't try and learn anything new. They just sit there and try and manifest becoming a millionaire. It's like, well, nothing's going to happen because nothing's come into effect. It's like the Big Bang. Like if those two atoms didn't collide, nothing would have happened. Things have to come into collision. Cause has to be created into effect. So I don't really believe in it from a logical standpoint. Do you think it's possible to work 12 to 14 hours a day and have a healthy relationship? How do you manage that, if you don't mind me asking? I've had this question an awful lot since I started talking about my relationship on these live streams. And it is 100% possible because I can tell you it's possible because I literally do this. So, I live with my girlfriend and, she does what she does and I do what I do. And the only real way that it's possible is to find someone that is okay with it and has enough of their own life to not want to see you all the time. But B, to set the expectation clearly. So when I first started dating my girlfriend, one of the first things I said to her on the first date in the first 10 minutes was, my life belongs to my work and you will always come second. And I said that to her point blank. And, I knew that if she wasn't okay with that, that I'd have walked away from any potential relationship because I love my work more than I love anything. And so that might sound like incredibly cold, but it set a very clear expectation so that when I went to do my 12-hour work days, we'd already agreed that that was going to come first. And that was always going to be the thing that mattered the most to me. And as well, you need to find a woman that finds ambition and all those things attractive. But honestly, man, the healthiest thing to do in a relationship, like specifically with the work thing, is always be willing to walk away from the relationship if you feel as though that your partner isn't adequately able to support you in your pursuit of your goals. Because if you're not willing to walk away from it because of that, then you're going to end up in this weird sort of trauma relationship where it's just not very healthy. So you need to always be able to walk away if you felt that that person wasn't going to be able to help you pursue your goals. In the same way that, a lot of people in relationships have fundamental needs, like things that they need to get from their other partner. And if they don't get them, then they either become very bitter and resentful, or their nervous system goes into overdrive and they have these massive emotional shutdowns. For me, the core central need that I have from a partner in a relationship is the permission and right to execute on my goals with full ruthlessness and ferocity. And once you find that in a woman, it's not hard. It's not easy to find, let me tell you. But I've had not really relationships because they didn't get into anything serious because of this problem. But I've been with people before who, after a month or two, are like, oh, like, I really need you to like give me more attention. And you'll, if there's been girls I've dated before who would tell me I worked too hard. And the second I heard those words came out of anyone's mouth, I would just cut it off, no matter how attractive they are or how rich their family is or anything. Like, as soon as a girl tells me I work too hard or that I need to stop working so hard, it's done. Because that if you stick around for that, like that she will fucking chip away at your empire and it will just crumble beneath your feet if you let any of that energy into your life. So yeah. How can I overcome a dopamine addiction that keeps me from working 12 hours? Well, the first thing to realize is that you're not addicted to dopamine, because if that was true, then we'd all be fucked. You're addicted to something that triggers a anticipatory response that gives you instant gratification. And so, if you want to basically regulate your dopamine and sort of re-control it, then you start by looking at all the behaviors in your life, whether it's vaping, drinking, gaming, porn, junk food. Look at the things that bring you great joy in anticipation of doing them. And that's a sign that a very strong a very strong dopamine response to a stimulus is when you're really looking forward to it, and if it's obviously particularly unhealthy, right? And then just remove those things from your life. And also, as well, I don't think that your dopamine addiction keeps you from working 12 hours. I think that's just a coping mechanism that you've created as some form of resistance. Like, you're using this idea of your dopamine addiction as a shield to avoid doing the work. I know people that are like drug addicts and junk food addicts who are really fat and overweight that still make millions of dollars and still work really hard. You don't need to have your dopaminergic system perfectly attuned and in check to warrant and permit you working hard. It just makes it significantly easier. So I would also suggest that you stop coping there, Gene, as well. Would you recommend I work for free for the first few clients? No, because you should never advertise it as free. No one trusts free, man. Like, if you're selling a service and you go to someone and say, "Hey, I'll do it for free," it makes you look like you're an unprofessional. If you say, "I'm going to do it as a pay on results basis," or "you only pay me once you get what you want," you'll get more appointments and you're actually going to get paid. It's way better to do that. No worries, Gene. You're welcome, man. How does being in ketosis help your cognitive ability? I think, dude, I spent 2 years in ketosis, and I've now sort of returned to eating fruit, which obviously means I'm no longer in ketosis, and I see very little difference in focus and performance. Ketosis definitely, like, my first 6 months on carnivore was definitely some of the most focused work I've ever done. However, the primary reason for my clarity of mind and ability to focus and cognitive ability was because I had just drastically reduced all of the inflammation in my body and repaired my gut. And so it's not necessarily the state of ketosis or the state of glycosis. Your metabolic state doesn't necessarily determine your cognitive ability. It's more your inflammation, your brain fog, your hormone management, your testosterone, and all those things that come as a result of potentially eating foods that keep you in ketosis. So the actual metabolic state doesn't necessarily give you that stuff, but you can get this real deep sense of primal focus when you're fasted, or specifically on carnivore. But usually it only lasts for a couple of months, and then it sort of diminishes off into something that's not as powerful, so to speak. But I've kind of found that as long as you don't eat processed sugar, and as long as you don't eat seed oils, and as long as you don't eat dairy and gluten, you're usually going to be 80% of the way there to having all the cognitive ability you could need to become a millionaire. So Emilio says, would you advise starting your own software to increase your LTV and long-term growth? No, not at the beginning, man. Starting a software is really difficult. Like, it's incredibly hard to do. You can always white label, go high level or something, but I don't think that really constitutes starting a software. So no, I would not do this at the beginning. There's a reason why I don't have one yet. There's far better ways to increase your lifetime value than doing some massive coding project. Lots of other things that you can sell that will be far more beneficial to increasing LTV. And not to mention as well, like, softwares need a lot of funding and they need lots of engineers. And if you want to do it properly, and no, I wouldn't do that. Does your brother watch your videos? Yeah, sometimes he does. What qualities do you look for before partnering? Well, the main things that I'll look for, I mean, this is the thing, is I can't really tell you what qualities to look for yourself, because the main thing about finding a partner is you want the same thing. So you want the same outcome in life. So you want the same lifestyle. You want to spend your money in the same way. And also you have the same value systems. So typically being of similar religious focus is really helpful, because that typically tells you where someone's value system lies. As well as, what sort of relationships do they have in their life? Are they focused? Are they distracted? Do they prefer complexity or simplicity? Do they prefer to be like lazy, or do they prefer to be diligent? Like, it's value alignment, but goal alignment at the same time. As far as equity split, I've always favored 50-50, man. Like, I don't really know any. I mean, there's lots of business partnerships that work and have worked when one person owns more equity than the other. But I much prefer the 50-50 thing. So, yeah. How did you feel when you were earning $0 a month? Pretty desperate, man. I was in a world of pain. What's your opinion on the Think and Grow Rich book? I don't really have one. I read it once ages ago and didn't find it that powerful. What's the best way to find out what to charge for pay-per results? Do a bunch of sales calls and try a bunch of models, man. I don't know. I can't tell you that really. How to get rich in college? Do the course. One thing I find really interesting about a lot of you guys is you'll throw these questions out that are basically like Hail Marys, hoping that there'll be like a sentence that I string together that will change everything for you. It's like, how do I make $1,000 if I have to in the next month? Or if you were 18 starting over again, what would you do? It's like, you guys kind of have to understand that asking questions like success is not that easy. And there are, probably a million pieces of information that you need to download into your brain and then act on in a linear fashion without making a ton of mistakes to make it work. And so you generally want to avoid asking these incredibly broad questions, when instead what you need to be doing is get started, run into a problem, and then ask a question about the problem that's stopping you from moving forward. Your views on NoFap and its relation to productivity. I don't really have any views on NoFap, man. And I don't know if it assists with productivity or not. I mean, I can tell you, man, do you think that the billionaires of the world are not ejaculating? Probably not, man. I think that people give way too much. The thing is with NoFap is it obviously appeals to a significant chunk of the collective unconscious in young men, because it encourages you to control your impulses and get your lust under control and stuff like that. And so what people start doing is they start attaching all sorts of favorable outcomes to this behavior, like being more productive and all these things, when in reality, I strongly doubt there's any relationship between not touching yourself and doing more work. I think people give way too much assent. What are your thoughts on day trading? I don't have any thoughts on day trading, man. I've never day traded in my life. One thing I don't like about day trading is that you're not really building any skills. Like, you're building the skill of day trading, but you're not building any value. Like, I don't like day trading because all you're doing is extracting money from the market. You're not helping anyone. You're not building anything. And also you're not creating any assets. And so like, once with day trading, if you stop trading, you stop making money, and that would piss me off, because you're not building anything for the long term. Do you ever have anxiety? That's a good question from Anthony. No, not really, man. The last time I felt anxiety, no, not that I can recall. I used to feel anxious a lot in school, when I was like a teenager growing up. I felt a lot of anxiety about my place in the world, and people being mean to me and shit in school and all those things. But Yeah, honestly, man, like no, I don't really feel anxious anymore. I feel very calm. Like my consistent state of being in the world is pretty steady and just calm. And I honestly attribute the majority of that to my diet, eating really clean, sleeping really consistently, not drinking coffee, not drinking alcohol, not intaking nicotine. Like when you think about our bodies and the way they're tuned, they're really tuned to just deal with basic single ingredient foods and lots of water. And so that's kind of anxiety and depression and all these other sort of mental illnesses that people have are basically just sort of symptoms. It's your body sort of screaming at you that you're doing something wrong. And I think that if you try to live like a caveman, and I don't mean in a cave, but I mean like in terms of your consumption, if you try to live like someone who lived, 100,000 years ago or whatever the hell, on the African plains, you'd probably find that your body will just naturally tune up and the anxiety goes away. That's always been my experience. In being able to achieve that sort of zen like calm state where nothing really phases you and everything's always going to be okay. It's a great thing. It's a great skill to develop as well. Do you take cold showers? Yes, I do. I've been taking cold showers pretty much every day for quite a few years now. I really like them because like a cold shower in the morning, like it forces you to get straight into that, like, let's go and fuck some shit up mode, because like I've been doing cold showers every day for a long time, and I'll still turn the shower on, especially now in the UK in November, it's really cold, and I'll turn the shower on and I know it's going to be cold, and like I still have that sort of like, oh, I don't want to get in, and then I get in, and that feeling, that overcoming that sort of pain and like that pain tolerance barrier, has been really helpful. Like doing that every morning for like years on end, it makes you very familiar. Like when it's the first thing you do in the morning, it's great because you wake up, you brush your teeth, you turn the cold shower on, and the very first action you do in the morning is facing some pain. And that's a pretty good thing to do, because then everything else throughout the day doesn't really seem that painful, because there's not much that hurts more in your average day-to-day life than a cold shower. Hunter says, has Sam had the biggest effect on you? Yeah, for sure. I mean, with the exception of like my father and my mother, in terms of life lessons and stuff and how I've been raised, Sam Evans has had more of an impact on me and my thinking and my trajectory and my paradigms and belief systems than any other human. In fact, there's probably only really 4 people on the planet that have influenced my thinking and belief systems. The first would be my mother and my father, because obviously that's where you learn your early development from. Everyone is the product of their parents to a large degree. But after that, it would be my business partner, Bo, and then Sam Evans. And then also a bit here and there from my close friends as well. But I don't think I could argue that, Sam has definitely had the biggest effect. Have you ever met Sam? No, I've never met him. He's invited us out to School HQ a couple of times to fly to LA, but I've been too busy both times. So we'll probably go and meet him at some point next year. It's on my to-do list for sure. I kind of owe him quite a lot of handshakes, for lack of better words. This is an interesting question here from Patsky. Patsky. Would you rather take it slow and enjoy the process, or would you always suggest to go full hardcore on reaching your goals? Well, I can tell you, man, that I personally enjoy the process a lot more. No worries, Hunter. You're welcome, man. I always personally enjoy the process a lot more when I'm gunning it as fast as I can. Like I find working slowly and sort of smelling the roses and dancing around to be really painful. I like to move with speed, and I prefer going full hardcore. But it depends what you want, man, because you can get to, 10K a month in 3 years or 6 months. It just depends on, like, getting to like an outcome is as simple as just doing the right actions. A certain number of actions, there's a definitive number of actions you can do to achieve an outcome. And how fast you get to that outcome depends on the time at which you compress doing those actions. So let's say that you're 20,000 cold calls away from 10K a month. It's like, well, you could get those done in you could get those done in like a month if you went fucking hardcore, like to the limit, or you could take a year, or you could take 10 years, as long as you do them. Yeah, I want to talk about this. This is a good question here. One sec. Yeah, so the bots have become like a real problem recently in the community. And like the problem we've got is we're starting to like rank on the discovery section of school now. And because of that, there's loads of bots joining the community and kind of just like ruining the whole thing for everyone. And we can't ban them fast enough. Like, honestly, I genuinely have someone checking the report section every single hour, and we ban maybe like 5 to 10 people an hour at this point. But it's getting to the point now where like the majority of the engagement is just bots, and it is really fucking annoying. Like, it's really pissing me off. So Sam and I, Sam Evans, we're discussing a potential solution for fixing that and addressing it, because, I want to try and create a community where we genuinely have like 250,000 people who are not actual real humans, like discussing things, But school has this massive bot problem. Like, the second you build like a big community, you just get swarmed by bots, and then like everything you built kind of just basically gets decimated. Yeah, I know the phone verification thing with Fiducia, but I don't want to turn that on because I don't want to restrict entry. I just want to restrict posting and commenting. So the potential solution that Sam and I are exploring is along a similar lines. So yeah, we're working on it. And I want it fixed as soon as possible, man, because I hate those bots. Like, they're pissing me off. Julia says, do you work non-stop or do you take breaks every 90 minutes or so? My working pattern is usually to work in like blocks of typically like 3 to 6 hours. So like, for example, I'm working on some program content at the moment, and what I'll do is typically try and lock in for a minimum of 3 hours. I don't really like having like a timer where every 90 minutes you take a break. What I'll usually do is lock in and work until I notice my brain starts to really like struggle to engage. And then I'll push through that a bit. And then once I get to a point where like, no matter how hard I try and focus, I just can't anymore, which could be like 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, then I'll stop. My best ever non-stop focus in one day was like 15 hours. I entered this, like, I was working on Apocalyptic Imperial Scale, which is I made it in Dubai. It's a video in Acquisition Nirvana and Easy Grow. And I got this. I was working on this Google Doc, and I woke up at 7 a.m. I started work at like 7 a.m. and I didn't finish work until probably, I think, like 10 p.m. And I didn't eat anything the entire day. I hardly drank any water, and I don't even know how the day went. I was so engrossed in the work, and I got that thing done like real quick. And that was like a weird day. I remember waking up, sitting down at my desk, and then the next thing I knew, it was like 10 p.m. I was like, what the fuck? Does eating steak or beef every day give you cancer? I can't get consistent advice because people don't want to. Well, my opinion of this argument is no. I don't think red meat does give you cancer. Because, look, first of all, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a health professional, and you should all be very aware of that. So whenever I give you diet advice or make claims that certain things aren't carcinogenic, that doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's my perception of the truth, which isn't always right. However, let's critically think this through for a second here. The human body evolved in alignment with herd animals. And what that means is that the most bioavailable form of fuel for our bodies would have been herd animals that we would have chased around and hunted around on the African plains when we were evolving. And so we would have eaten a lot of bison, which is red meat. Okay, it's basically just a cow, but in a different form. And so the human body evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to consume nothing but red meat and the occasional berry. And when people say that red meat gives you cancer, I'd ask why, because carcinogens are typically things that you consume or that come into contact with organs in your body that are foreign and that your body doesn't know how to deal with. But I struggle to understand why it would give you cancer if your body has basically evolved to eat it, because that's all that was bioavailable to us. Sure, we'd have had some honey here and there and some blueberries every now and then and some other berries and some shit like that and whatever the hell and some sweet potato in the ground. But 80% of our food, 90% was red meat, and it was fatty red meat. And so if red meat gave us cancer consistently, it would have been impossible for human beings to evolve because they would have died of cancer. And so, yeah, I think that's my opinion. So that's what I consume for the most part. Oh, that's a sick question from Gene. What a great question. Yesterday I watched Gladiator 1. Well, first of all, man, if that was your first experience watching Gladiator, then congratulations. Who here has seen Gladiator and who here hasn't? And I'm talking Gladiator 1, not Gladiator 2. Who's seen Gladiator before? Oh my God. Julius, you haven't seen Gladiator? Oh my goodness. Right, okay. Gentlemen, we have some homework for tonight. Any of you who haven't seen Gladiator 1, you must go and watch it. Russell Crowe, you got to go and watch it, boys. Don't bother with Gladiator 2 though. I really Gladiator 2 was kind of shit. Yeah, it kind of sucked. Gladiator 2 sucked. Anyway, what are the greatest lessons and values you learned from the Roman emperors? I mean, dude, that is such a great question, but I just don't think it's one that I have. That's like a YouTube video that I would want to think through for like an entire day, because all of the different emperors had their different attributes. Caesar was notoriously known for his clemency, and there's a lot to be learned from there. Augustus relied on his generals to make his military decisions. So there's like Agrippa and stuff to those decisions. There's a lot to be noted there as well. And I think that to answer that question properly, I need a long time to think about it, man, because I've read dozens of books on ancient Rome and antiquity and ancient Greece and about, everyone from Hannibal to Alexander, and it's not that this is the interesting thing about reading history is the lessons that you learn and the points that you pick up from those books will find their way into your behavior without you being cognizant of it and aware of it. And, I've read books about all these people, but you don't necessarily come to make a decision in your life and make that decision. You're like, oh, what about page 64 of Caesar a Life by Anthony Everett or whatever, or by some author. You start making decisions and you start taking these actions unconsciously. And so, one thing that I really love to do is read about these fantastic historical figures. And when you come to make decisions in your life, you will naturally weave the lessons you learn from them into your decisions without being aware of it. And like when you ask me right now, like what are the greatest lessons and values you learn from Roman emperors? It's like I could give you like a little list, but there's hundreds of them that are just in my unconscious that I've just read. So yeah, how did Alexander the Great die? Well, isn't that the mystery? Supposedly he was poisoned, but that's just impossible to know. Alexander the Great had just such a sick life. Like, I mean, he's a ruthless fucker. Millions of people died at his sword, but my goodness, what a life. The only reason he didn't keep going is because his army didn't want to. His ambition knew no limits. How often do you play golf? Usually, like I'll go and play like a proper game of golf like once a week, and then I'll go to the driving range maybe once a week as well. Maybe get a lesson once a week. And I don't play it like all the time. It's just nice to sort of chill here and there. What do you think of starting a clipping agency? I wouldn't bother with that because I think AI is probably going to do all the clipping in the next year anyway. Yeah, I'll usually play golf with friends. If I'm going to the driving range, I'll go on my own. If I'm playing an actual game, I wouldn't play that on my own usually. Yeah, lots of cities with Alexander in the name. I mean, the famous city that he founded was Alexandria in Egypt, where they had the big lighthouse, the lighthouse of Alexandria, which fell down. But yeah, he was a sick guy, man. He was a really sick guy. I think like it's difficult to comprehend the paradigm and mindset of someone like that. And I've tried to do this, but like, we talk about Alexander the Great and we talk about his conquests and, you can understand them and you can sort of appreciate the gravity of them. But to really get into that, like, mind, like to actually imagine what it's like to be in that position, have that much power and influence, and to be able to exert your will on the world in a way that is just so ruthless and so like, I mean, imagine that. Like, you think when you actually try to really think about someone's life. Josh says, I just bought Napoleon a Life. Have you read it? Yeah, I've read that book, man. Good luck. It's like 850 pages long. Yeah, I read it. I read it pretty quickly. It's a really good book. It's a difficult book to read because if you don't already have some pre-existing knowledge of Napoleon's life and specifically the French Revolution, if you don't have an understanding of the geopolitics at the time, the early 1800s and stuff, then it can be a little difficult to follow because in that book it's a good book, but it's definitely not the best introduction to Napoleon or the Napoleonic Wars. Like if I was going to read that book again, what I would do if I had no previous knowledge of Napoleon is I would go and watch like all of the YouTube videos about the Napoleonic Wars. And then that way, when you read the book, you'll have these little points of reference that make the things you're reading more meaningful. But dude, there are hundreds. I've got that book. I annotated it. There are hundreds of things in that book that I'll circle and highlight and stuff like that. So yeah, Eric says, I'm disappointed my question was overlooked. I don't think it was that unreasonable. Dude, there's like 100 questions flying here every minute, man. I don't read the chat when I'm answering, so it's incredibly likely that I just didn't see your question as opposed to overlook it, man. Have a good one. Best book for someone that knows very little about ancient history, but specifically relevant to business in some way. That's a great question. It's really difficult because, like, when you read history and when you read about antiquity and stuff, none of it's going to be particularly relevant to business or sales or service delivery or anything like that. But there's something about having a relatively deep pocket of knowledge into a corner of history that you can pull wisdom from and pull anecdotes from, and it makes you seem way, way, way more intelligent than you are. Like when you're at dinner with some client or something, or you're making a YouTube video, or you're doing a live stream, and you're able to start spouting off random historical anecdotes that 99.9% of people just don't know, you just seem more intelligent. And so it's definitely got a lot of merit to that. But in terms of a good book, I mean, you can just go on Amazon and just search like anything about Rome or Greece. But Discourses is a good example. Not a bad example. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, that brings us to an hour, and I've got to run to another meeting now. So I appreciate you guys and your time here, and thanks for the good questions. A lot of them I really enjoyed answering today. So I think we'll round off today, and I look forward to seeing you guys back here on Tuesday next week. I think the next live stream we do on Tuesday next week will specifically be on school, not YouTube. So it's going to be like a school-specific live stream hosted in the school platform. So there'll probably be a few less people outside of YouTube, and it will allow you guys to ask more questions if you're specifically in the academy already, which will be exciting. So adios, guys, and I'll see you later. Take care. Cheers.